Have you ever stopped to wonder how all your online clicks, your phone's location, maybe even just things you talk about casually, how that might all be secretly pulled together, forming this incredibly detailed picture of you? And what if the tools that are supposedly designed to keep us safe are also subtly nudging your thoughts, your behaviors, maybe without you even realizing it? Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're going to unpack Palantir. It's a company often, wrapped in secrecy, but it sits right at that crossroads of AI, massive data integration, and frankly, global power. Our mission here is to try and demystify what they can do, look at their, controversial beginnings, and explore what it all means, the implications for you, for society, and maybe even for democracy itself. We're pulling our insights from a really interesting YouTube video, plus various articles and research that dig into Palantir's reach, its technologies, and all the debate around how governments and militaries are using it. Okay, let's get into it. Before we zero in on Palantir itself, maybe we can trace this kind of technology back a bit. We hear AI thrown around constantly, but what are the actual roots here in this context?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. It's crucial to understand that the AI we talk about now, especially the kind Palantir uses for data intelligence, it didn't just pop up with things like ChatGPT or, Grok. Artificial intelligence, like the broad idea, has been developing for decades. Yeah. I mean, I remember way back in '99 working on systems for a huge robotic container terminal in Europe, ECT. Even then, we were implementing early AI for stuff like number plate recognition. Didn't always work perfectly, mind you, but the ambition was there.
Okay, so it's been bubbling under the surface for a while.
Exactly. And then machine learning really kicked things into high gear. By, say, 2015, machine learning wasn't just lab stuff anymore. It was out there doing real work. Think about fraud detection. Big financial places in Europe, like Nationale Nederlanden or Deltaloid, they were already using algorithms to sift through millions of transactions, looking for weird patterns.
Spotting the needles in the haystack.
Precisely. And that leads us to data integration. This is the absolute foundation, the bedrock of what companies like Palantir do. It's all about merging just enormous amounts of data from all these different places, different databases, maybe in different languages, using different models. It's messy.
So it's not just grabbing data, it's making it all fit together somehow. How does that actually happen, that integration piece?
Right. So the process, technically it's often called ETL, that's extract, transform, load, or sometimes ELT, slightly different order. You basically extract the data from all those separate sources. Then you transform it, which means putting it into one common format, a unified model so everything can, talk to each other.
Ah, okay.
And then you load it into one huge central database. But it's not just the raw data points. You add context, metadata, like the ADSIF data on a photo, right? Tells you the date, time, maybe the exact GPS location where it was taken. All that gets added. And then it's all organized really carefully into something called an ontology.
An ontology. Okay, can you break that down a bit for us? What does that mean here?
Yeah, sure. Think of an ontology as a really smart, structured map. It defines all the things in the data, people, places, events, whatever, and crucially, how they're all related to each other. It's like building a super detailed library catalog where every book, every author, every subject is not just listed, but linked and understood in context. That structure is what makes it so powerful for asking complex questions later.
Got it. Like a relationship database on steroids.
Kind of, yeah. And the key thing for listeners is this isn't some brand new futuristic tech. These kinds of data integration tools, they've been the sort of hidden plumbing inside most big companies for easily the last 10 years. Just working away in the background.
That really sets the stage. So incredibly sophisticated plumbing for data, pulling everything together. But I guess the really interesting part, maybe the scary part, is what happens next. When you take all that power and point it at individuals, that feels like where we hit a crucial point, right? Going from analyzing big data sets to applying those odds to a specific person. How does that change things ethically?
Well, this brings up a really important question. And honestly, it highlights what many see as a fundamental, almost philosophical mistake in how this tech is sometimes used. You might have a statistic, right? Like the overall chance of someone getting a certain type of cancer pulled from a huge medical database, but then trying to project that exact probability onto you as a specific individual, that's where it gets problematic.
Because the general doesn't necessarily apply to the specific.
Exactly. Those large-scale probabilities, they're just not directly applicable to one person's fate or risk. I mean, think about fraud detection again. A system might flag your transaction with a, say, 10% chance of being fraudulent based on patterns. But that doesn't mean your transaction is 10% fraudulent. It just means it fits a pattern. You still need a human to check.
Right. Context matters.
It completely matters. It reminds people inevitably of that sci-fi scenario, Minority Report, predicting a crime before it happens. The core problem, legally, ethically, is simple. The thing has not happened yet. And if you start setting norms or risk factors based purely on data patterns, well, you can very quickly slide into a situation where, and this is chilling, everyone is a suspect.
Wow.
That gap, that jump from big data probabilities to individual judgment, that's where so many ethical alarms start ringing.
Okay, so with that powerful data integration ability and these really tricky questions around predicting individual behavior, let's finally bring in Palantir. What exactly is this company, and why is it such a big deal in this whole conversation?
Right, so zooming out again, Palantir, it was founded back in 2002 or 2003. Peter Thiel, Alex Karp, some others. It wasn't your typical garage startup in Silicon Valley. Its origin story is quite revealing, actually. It got significant early funding from the CIA.
CIA directly.
Well, through their venture capital arm in QTEL.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, CIA money. And this is part of a bigger thing happening after 9/11. Companies like Google, Oracle, they also got similar funding around that time to build out intelligence tools.
So born from that post 9/11 national security push, that must have really shaped what they became.
Absolutely. That specific mission, tied so closely to national security from day one, put them on a very particular path. People sometimes call it the secret Google.
Secret Google, why?
It just highlights its immense power to crunch data, right? Similar to Google in capability, but focused differently, maybe even going beyond consumer tech because of its access and specialization. They basically have two main products. There's Gotham, that's the one really geared towards military, intelligence agencies, police work. And then there's Foundry, which is designed for, let's say, broader use in different industries. But here's a really important point to stress. The basic capabilities, integrating data, analyzing it, those aren't exclusive to Palantir. Not by a long shot. You can find similar tools offered by the big cloud players, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, Amazon AWS. They often market them for, understanding customer behavior, micro-targeting ads, that kind of commercial stuff.
So Palantir's edge isn't necessarily the raw tech, but how it's packaged and who it's sold to.
Exactly. It's about the specific, often highly customized applications and that unique historical tie-in with the intelligence world. That's a big part of their story.
That's the key distinction. But okay, Palantir hasn't stood still. Their capabilities now go way beyond just integrating data or making simple predictions. This evolution into really advanced AI, it opens up some new and honestly pretty unsettling doors. What can these newer AI brains actually do?
Yeah, this is where it gets significantly more advanced. Palantir has definitely integrated these newer types of AI, including the big, large language models, into their platforms. Now, they don't exactly shout about every single capability from the rooftops, but if you look at their patents, you get a sense of where they're going. These newer AIs, they can move beyond just pattern spotting. They can start to extract really detailed psychological profiles from all that data.
Psychological profiles. Okay, that sounds like a massive leap from just, say, recognizing a license plate. What does that mean in practice?
It means they can build this incredibly detailed picture of your personality, your tendencies, your likely reactions, based on everything, your online trails, who you talk to, what you buy, maybe even biometric data down the line.
Wow.
And it doesn't stop there. They can also apparently measure the impact of specific messages, micro-targeting, manipulation attempts on individuals, or even whole groups of people.
Measure the impact so they can see if the manipulation is working.
That seems to be the idea. And here's where it gets really concerning. It creates a potential feedback loop. The system observes how you react, refines its understanding of you, and then suggests new, potentially more effective ways to influence you or people like you. We're not just talking about predicting what you might do anymore. We're talking about systems designed to understand and actively shape how you think, how you feel, how you behave on a massive scale.
That sounds disturbingly close to some kind of ultra-sophisticated, personalized propaganda engine.
It's a chilling comparison, isn't it? There have been observations from places like the Land Information and Maneuver Center, LEMC, studying how narratives get pushed in the media, measured for effect, and then adjusted. So for you, the listener, this means the AI isn't just guessing your next move. It's potentially understanding your personality, your buttons, your soft spots, maybe better than you know yourself, and subtly nudging you.
That is genuinely unnerving. So, okay, these capabilities exist, at least potentially. Where are we actually seeing them used right now? What are the concrete, real-world consequences today?
Well, that's the critical question, isn't it? Where is this hitting the ground? And we do see these systems in some very sensitive areas. For example, Palantir has been famously used by ICE, that's the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, for tracking migrants, building these complex maps of individuals, their families, their associates.
Okay.
And for police work, more generally, the power is immense. Generating social network graphs, who knows who, mapping out someone's location history over time, potentially even pulling in things like medical history, maybe through data leaks or other less official ways.
This really hits that common response people have. Well, I've got nothing to hide.
It completely undermines it, doesn't it? Because the point isn't whether you've done something wrong. The point is that these AIs can potentially understand your personality, your vulnerabilities, your triggers,
Yeah.
maybe better than your own partner or family does.
Scary thought.
And we're seeing this kind of micro-targeting elsewhere too, of course. Think about Meta Facebook. They use AI constantly to generate personalized ads, tailored right down to your inferred psychological profile, and they track how you respond across the web.
And the impact isn't trivial, is it?
Not according to some researchers.
Yeah.
Professor Robert Epstein, for instance, has done work suggesting that Google's algorithmic nudges, those feedback loops, might have shifted something like 6 million votes in the 2020 U.S. election.
6 million. That's staggering. It feels like this taps into older ideas, though, about persuasion.
Oh, absolutely. It connects right back. Think of Edward Bernays, Freud's nephew, basically inventing modern public relations back in the early 20th century, figuring out how to sway public opinion, often bypassing rational thought. Or more recently, Richard Thaler's nudge theory, using subtle prompts to guide choices. That's become, arguably, the main way governments in the West try to communicate and influence behavior now.
So it's less about facts, more about feelings.
Increasingly, yes. It's about influencing emotions, setting up false choices, driving polarization. And frankly, anyone who thinks they're completely immune to this sophisticated psychological manipulation is probably, well, being quite naive.
Okay, this sounds incredibly powerful, maybe even alarming. But you mentioned Europe earlier. This isn't just a U.S. thing. Palantir is operating in places like the Netherlands, too. What's the story there?
Right, let's bring it closer to home for some listeners. The Dutch police, yes, they acquired Palantir. The codename was Rafijn de Reed. It was initially framed as a trial run, focused on combating serious crime. But the actual history of Palantir in the Netherlands, well, it goes back much further than has often been admitted publicly. Our sources suggest that Dick Schoof, who was a major figure in Dutch intelligence circles back then and is now the interim prime minister, he actually signed the first test contract way back in 2011.
2011, that's much earlier than reported.
Much earlier. Then Mark Rutte signed a more general contract in 2016. And get this, in 2020, Palantir was even brought in to help integrate data for the COVID-19 response, location data, cell tower data, all that stuff.
So it's been a long, deep involvement, not just a recent trial. But this hasn't exactly been front-page news, has it?
No, quite the opposite. Which means, according to the sources we've seen, that official answers given in Parliament about Palantir's use have been, let's say, significantly at odds with the documentary evidence. Some sources describe it as being pertinently lied to.
Wow.
Peter Jaap Abersberg, who was at the NCTV at the time, that's the Dutch counterterrorism unit, he was reportedly responsible for this somewhat secret acquisition. The official reasons given for the secrecy, like needing to keep methods hidden from criminals, well, they've been heavily questioned.
Sounds like there was a real determination to get this technology in, maybe without too much public discussion or scrutiny.
That certainly seemed to be the case. I remember hearing stories from security and counterterrorism conferences years ago. Tech companies would be there, pitching all these amazing possibilities to government officials. And you could almost see the officials' eyes light up, thinking about predictive policing and all the data they could harness. The fact that the Dutch police bought Palantir and did it largely under wraps, well, it's pretty telling, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Especially given how controversial this kind of tech is.
Definitely telling. Now, shifting gears slightly from the technical and the governmental to the ideological. Palantir isn't just code. The people who founded it have quite distinct outspoken views. And that raises serious questions about how the technology might be aimed, particularly in really volatile regions.
Yes, this is a fascinating and frankly quite disturbing layer. There's a very strong ideological drive from the founders Peter Thiel, Alex Karp, the CTO Sankar. They are, by their own description, extremely strong supporters of Israel. Some have even called themselves the biggest Zionists of all.
Okay, and how does that ideology connect to the technology's use?
Well, this context becomes incredibly relevant when we look at reports concerning a system called Lavender. Our sources indicate it's very likely that Palantir's AI is the engine behind Lavender.
The lavender system. What does it do?
Lavender is reportedly designed to autonomously vacuum up huge amounts of data. Facebook posts, WhatsApp messages, Instagram activity, drone surveillance footage, satellite images focusing on Palestinians, and use it to generate profiles and assess risk levels. The reported justification for using it is, well, shocking. Reports claim it was implemented because, quote, human analysis could not find enough targets.
Wait, they had more bombs than targets.
That's the reported rationale, meaning the AI was allowed to be much looser in its criteria for identifying potential targets than human analysts would have been.
That sounds incredibly dangerous. What about human oversight, checking the AI's decisions?
This connects right back to that low discretion issue we see elsewhere, like in that Dutch childcare benefit scandal, as you might remember, where officials basically rubber-stamped the algorithm's flawed conclusions. With Lavender, the reports suggest human review of an AI-generated target might have been just maybe a few minutes, minimal, almost non-existent.
Has to be a few minutes.
And there are even more disturbing reports about a related system, sometimes nicknamed Where's Daddy, apparently designed to specifically time attacks for when a target was at home, ensuring their entire family was present.
That's horrific.
The reported outcomes have led critics and human rights groups to use extremely strong language, alleging mass murder, war crimes, calling them terrorist acts, carried out with the help of technology provided to or used by state intelligence services. It raises profound questions.
And Palantir's position on Lavender, have they responded to these specific allegations?
Despite their very public pro-Israel stance and their open boasting about the work they do for the Ukrainian military, Palantir has denied being directly involved with the Lavender system itself. But again, it's crucial to remember, the underlying type of capability, advanced data fusion, AI-driven analysis, potentially autonomous targeting, isn't unique to Palantir. Similar tools are available from other big tech players like Microsoft Azure. It points to a wider industry capability.
Okay, so stepping back from the specifics for a moment, what does this all really mean? We've gone deep into the tech, the applications, the ideology. But zooming out, this throws up just massive questions about ethics, about responsibility, about the kind of society we're building.
It really does. It forces us to ask some fundamental questions. Is AI, in its current state, truly suitable for making decisions with such enormous impact, life and death decisions? And maybe more fundamentally, is Palantir or technology like it just an instrument, just a tool like a hammer? Or has it crossed a line? Can it become effectively a weapon, especially when combined with autonomous functions?
The classic guns don't kill people, people kill people's argument, but for AI.
Exactly. The hammer can build a house or it can smash a skull. But that then leads to the next question. What's the responsibility of the person selling the hammer? Should you sell incredibly powerful tools, knowing they could be used for deeply unethical, harmful purposes? Where does the seller's responsibility end and the user's begin?
It's a really blurry line. And are people inside these companies wrestling with this?
Sometimes, yes. We have seen examples. Palantir employees themselves protested the company's work with ICE. There have been reports of Renault workers in France refusing to make parts for weapons destined for Israel or Ukraine. You had the whole controversy in the Netherlands about supplying F-35 fighter jet parts, so there is internal dissent sometimes. But ultimately, you're right. Palantir is a tool. It's the humans, the people who fund it, the governments that deploy it, the individuals who make decisions based on its output. They hold the ultimate responsibility.
And it exists within a whole ecosystem, right? Politics, ideology.
Absolutely. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. You have the political context, the societal pressures, specific ideological agendas like Zionism being cited as a driving force, or maybe sometimes used as a shield for certain actions. And you definitely have opportunistic politicians eager to leverage these powerful tools. It reminds me in a way of social psychology findings, like the Lucifer effect from the Stanford prison experiment. How ordinary, even well-meaning people can end up doing terrible things when put into certain roles or systems. The people working at the NCPV or in these agencies, they're people you know, right?
Yeah.
Neighbors, colleagues.
Yeah.
And we've seen, especially since 9/11, then the financial crisis, then COVID, a steady erosion of checks and balances, of democratic oversight.
Some argue it's created a kind of regent culture in government where moral courage or ethical questioning is maybe selected against.
And how do we as citizens fit into this? Are we just watching it happen?
Yeah.
Well, here's the uncomfortable part. We're often not just watching, we're participating, usually without realizing it. Think about where your pension money is invested. Huge asset managers like BlackRock use their own powerful AI, Aladdin, to manage trillions. And just our everyday use of technology, social media, cloud storage, our smartphones constantly tracking us, smartwatches monitoring our health. We are all feeding data into these vast systems that are increasingly interconnected.
So we're part of the machine, essentially.
In many ways, yes. And even when people try to resist, say, government overreach, those movements can get complicated. Some argue that resistance efforts have been hijacked by political figures. Think about Trump, who, ironically, gave Palantir his biggest military contract ever, distracting from the core issues of surveillance and control.
It's a complex picture.
The really inconvenient truth might be, we are doing this to ourselves. How much of what you think, what you feel, is genuinely your authentic thought versus something subtly prompted or shaped by micro-targeting AI? It's like living in that mirror palace, or maybe even the Matrix. How much is real?
Is there any way out? Or examples of pushback?
There are flickers. Norway, for instance, made a conscious decision to stop using Palantir, specifically citing ethical concerns. That kind of open public debate and decisive action is rare, but it shows it's possible.
But having that debate seems incredibly difficult these days.
It really is. The whole online environment makes genuine discussion so hard. You have deliberate sabotage, people poisoning the well with conspiracy theories like Flat Earth or QAnon, armies of bots muddying the waters. Trust is just eroded at every level.
So what's the antidote?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Maybe it requires a return to something more fundamental. Call it spiritual grounding, call it Bushido, call it whatever you want, but a commitment to core, unconditional human values. Moving beyond tribalism, beyond double standards, and finding principles that hold true regardless of the US versus them narrative, that seems crucial to counter these powerful systemic forces.
So wrapping this up, what does it all mean? We've covered a huge amount today, the nuts and bolts of AI and data integration, Palantir's specific role, the really deep ethical questions it forces us to confront, how governments are using this power. It's definitely a lot to digest, but feels absolutely critical for just understanding the world we live in now.
I think that's right. If we connect it all back to the bigger picture, we're clearly at a major crossroads. The question isn't just about what AI can technically achieve anymore. It's about what we as human beings should allow it to do. It really pushes us to grapple with fundamental ideas about control, about autonomy, about privacy, and ultimately about what it even means to be human in an age of intelligent machines.
That leads to a really provocative final thought, doesn't it?
Well, consider this possibility. What if AI, in the end, becomes a kind of self-limiting technology?
Self-limiting. How so?
Think about it. If eventually every experience, every piece of news, everything you see online, maybe even things you hear or feel, could potentially be manipulated, generated, or outright faked by incredibly sophisticated AI. Think deepfakes on steroids, think Google's world simulator concepts, maybe even neural interfaces down the line. When you reach a point where distinguishing the real from the artificial becomes almost impossible, what choices will you make?
It's the ultimate trust breakdown.
Exactly. Will we get to a point, maybe like in the Matrix, where you have to consciously choose the blue pill, accepting a comfortable, perhaps completely simulated reality, or the red pill, seeking out authentic, messy, maybe difficult, but real human connection and truth?
A profound choice.
So the final question for you, the listener, is, in a world increasingly saturated with simulation and manipulation, what does it truly mean to choose to remain human, to choose authenticity? What does that look like for you?